This is Track Talk, and we're going to be doing a game of 1849 again tonight. Looking at the start order for the companies, it looks like ATA is going to be first and SFA will be second. AFG is actually third, so the SFA is the worst of those three companies. May see a little bit of a stall in order for the players to try and prevent the player after them from starting the AFG. Regardless, it looks like Tacitus has priority. We'll be starting us off in the auction. And he actually just buys the cheap blocker private. That's a little bit unusual. That does open up the more attractive privates for the following players, and we'll see if they're just going to kind of zipper up this auction as a result. Instead, Satori is bidding on the last private, getting the presidency of the ATA. Again, a good company, so a reasonably attractive private. Cody Maniac is going to be joining him, and Emil is going to build on the SMS. Still an expensive private, but potentially useful if he's stuck with the SFA, for instance. The Tacitus player, does he just buy another private here? He instead is going to buy or bid on the presidency of the ATA, so just taking the opportunity for a cheap private, it looks like. Satori does take the mountain busting company, and this is a consequence of basically buying that cheap blocker. And we may just see, well, I don't think that Cody Maniac is going to want to buy the Campania just because that will give the SMS for free to Emil. Emil is not competing with him for the RSA, so I don't think he really wants to give away a private for free. If, for instance, Emil was one of the other players on the RSA, he might be tempted to pull here and hopefully get Emil unable to price enforce. Of course, the downside of that is he's also reduced his ability to bid it up because he would have bought a $75 private. So I don't think he's going to pull here, but let's see. He does. Well, so it's okay. He probably is not going to be taking the RSA as a result. And who is in the best spot to take this? Tacitus has spent the least, so that would be interesting if he was able to get the cheap private for face and then also end up with the nice presidency of the ATA. I don't know if the other players are going to allow that, but it might be a little bit hard for them to prevent it. We'll see how much he wants to push his luck with it. Satori is bidding 170. Kodamaniac, he's the one that just bought that private. He is still in the running, it looks like. Tacitus also staying in. I have to imagine that we'll be seeing Satori and Kodamaniac passing fairly early here. But they're staying in for now. Tacitus also in. They are really staying in. Kodamaniac does pass out kind of as expected, but he stayed in much longer than I expected. Tacitus bidding again. Satori staying right with him, and actually Satori ends up with it. So he will be leaving with the mountain busting and the presidency of the ATA. I don't know that that's too amazing. He could be laying cheap track here already. And let's see what he pars this for. So he pars it for 100, and we will be into the auction. Who is going to be starting this SFA? I don't imagine that many of these players are eager to do it, but Emil has the teleport, so if anybody's going to do it, maybe he will. And he passes. Satori is buying his own presidency shares. So last player in the first round of the stock round, does he start the SFA? He will, and he has the port private. I don't know that that has really impressive synergy with the SFA. He could eventually get down to Terra Nova, of course, but it's going to take him a while to get there. This opens up the AFG, much better company, and I imagine we'll be seeing Emil take this. He does, and does he take Terra Nova? Let's see. He does. So pretty standard. And this leaves Tacitus with the CTL. CTL is a company I hate to play in this game. It really feels bad to run that company, and he has no way to escape from its far west kind of dungeon with the cheap private he bought. So I don't imagine he's excited by this. And it looks like everybody just passed. I was a little bit confused there. So Tacitus is going to end up with priority, and the other three players all have a presidency. Just took me a second to realize what had happened there. So we're actually into the operating round. ATA is laying the narrow gauge track as expected, linking up with Ragusa, and he's going to token that how many trains does he buy here? He could look to buy 2 and hope to break into green before the next operating round, in which case he would be able to hit the expensive port here with an upgrade. But that's a little bit risky. Of course, by buying 2 trains, you make it much more likely that the other players will buy into green. Do they have the money to do that? The SFA does not, so they would have to issue. We'll see what comes with this. Buys a 4 and just going to stick for 1 for now. SFA, he's laying towards Terra Nova, and he buys just 1 4 train as well. AFG really only has money for a 4 train. He's going to actually work to link up with the SFA. Interesting that he makes that decision instead of heading over to Ragusa. Maybe he doesn't want to lay track that would allow SFA to immediately upgrade and get into Ragusa, but I don't know. I think it's probably more lucrative to head over there. He is going to buy 4, and we are now at the 6s, so he must have actually bought, who bought 2 4s? I see. The AT, I missed that, did buy 2 4s. So they will be looking at green in the next operating round. And turn order is pretty important here because someone probably wants to operate last in the hopes that the other companies will buy the green train. They are buying treasury shares. Tacitus is the only one that can afford a share actually, and what's he going to choose to continue investing in? Looks like the ATA an attractive option because it has the 2 trains compared to the other players. And it looks like Satori actually sells out of the ATA, dumps it on Tacitus. That's interesting. It's still a pretty healthy company and has decent track for the early game. So I guess he's going to be looking to start the CTL. That's, I think, a strictly worse company. And he does. He could bring out green. In fact, he's going to be operating before everyone else, so he's going to be probably forced to bring out green. But that just opens up the other players' privates. I'm a little bit confused by what he's hoping to accomplish here. The other players are picking up the cheap shares that he has sold out of. Tacitus happy to probably clear the market. And going to leave 1 share left in there, so we'll be falling back. And we'll see the CTL operate. So what is he hoping to accomplish here? Doesn't have money for a green train right now, does he? He does. He's going to start laying toward the SFA. And he does buy the green. This doesn't rust anybody's trains, and allows him to lay better track. So not really sure that was advisable. SFA linking up with Terra Nova almost certainly. Probably dropping a token there. He does. That's bad news for the ATA. So maybe Satori was worried that SFA was going to somehow operate before the ATA, but I'm pretty sure ATA, unless he had sold out, was pretty confidently going to be operating before the SFA. He is buying in his private so he can put the extra money onto the port, and he will run for 90. That should be enough for him to move forward. And he could issue for a train here, but he's going to pass for now. AFG, he is actually not laying any track at all and running for 70. He also pays it out, and he issues a ton of shares, which allows him to buy in his privates. So he's going to have a good amount of money into the next stock round. ATA can also issue shares here. Needs to be a little bit careful he doesn't open up that double share. He's going to upgrade his home tile. So this is exactly what I was talking about, where now he's going to be able to hit that $60 revenue center. So good news for him. And let's see if he's able to take good advantage of that. Paying for 130. And he also buys in his private. He only has a cheap private, so not going to be a huge boon to him, but he does have the highest revenue, so not too bad. He's able to afford a 6 train. We'll be running 3 trains in the next operating round, and we'll have track to do it. Doesn't look like anybody's going to be in a real good position to rust his 4s, so should be able to get probably 2 runs at least from these, maybe even 3. And he's actually going to redeem a share as well. Satori doesn't have any cash and may have eliminated himself from the game with this early action that he's taken. We'll see if he's able to come back from this. Kodamaniac, he is buying an ATA. Again, these shares are going to be quite attractive. The only problem here is that Tacitus shares are probably going to fly off the shelves, and they're not going to bring much capital into the company. He is in a position to potentially pick up the double share if someone gives it to him. So they may see people basically playing with a poison third share in the treasury in order to prevent someone else from picking that up, which would be good news for Tacitus. He probably wants these shares to stay in the treasury. And Emil is buying his own AFG rather than ATA. Tacitus, he buys another share of the ATA, not going to be able to pick up his double share now. I don't know, that might have been a little bit of a tactical error. Kodomaniac, he will buy an SFA. Emil, he is going to buy an AFG. I would kind of like to see Emil pressure for that double share in the ATA. He could buy, if he didn't waste his money on other shares, he could buy the one share and then nobody else would have really cash or space for the double share. It gives him a good chance of picking it up. And as we said, it's going to be running pretty well. I don't think it's a huge dump risk right now, and having the double share might be worth it. The only problem is that if Tacitus does dump this company, he could just then steal the double share when he dumps and leave you with the train liability. So maybe not entirely safe, but probably a risk worth taking, or a risk that I would consider taking at least. Tacitus buys a 6 share. This leaves the double share available. Satori and Kodomaniac are in a bad position to take advantage of that, so it's probably going to be going to Emil. And he is in no rush to pick it up, actually. He's going to be buying his own double share from the treasury. I missed that was even available. How did that come about? I guess he was just buying his own shares to expose it and nobody was willing to fight him for it. So he does pick up a double share, just not the one I was expecting. Emil buying one more share of the ATA, actually from the CTL, sorry. Not the best share. It's kind of expensive compared to these other shares, and also is not going to be running very well, I don't think. Regardless, this is going to leave Tacitus with priority, it looks like, and we will see the SFA operate first. He's upgrading his home token and going to be running for 100 and pays it out. Still not able to afford a 6 train unless he issues some shares here. He does issue shares. We'll be picking up a green train in the next set of operating rounds. CTL, first run. He is continuing down south, runs for only 50, pays it out, and he's not able to afford any trains either. ATA could afford another train here, but I think needs to be very careful that he doesn't completely deplete his treasury so early in the game. Probably going to be looking to lay Vittoria and run into Terra Nova would be my guess, which he does. We're going to be running 3 trains, and it's actually only 180. I was expecting it to be a little bit higher. We'll be able to upgrade Ragusa and improve his run a little bit. Also may want to start looking to run up to Catania. IFT, I believe, is the last company to float. It is. So it might be a while before he has any competition for that part of the map. He's paying out 180 and has no shares to redeem. So is Emil looking to teleport somewhere? Is that what we're seeing? He looks like teleported up to Palermo. That's a nice revenue center, but he only has 1 train, so he's not going to be able to run the track he has and this nice revenue center, at least in this operating round, but probably we'll be seeing him pick up a 2nd train here. He buys a 6. There's 1 6 left. Does he buy a 2nd 6? No, I'm going to pass for now. I think this is good news for the ATA who's running 2 4 trains. He's redeeming a share. Should be able to redeem several shares over the course of the operating and has a bunch of cash in the company, and they're very cheap. SFA, he is looking to head towards Palermo. Going to be expensive for him to lay all this track. And he pays out, can pick up the last 6, probably should pick up the last 6, and is actually going to pass. So he's in danger of just falling back, I think. Because we probably will see more companies floated in the next operating round, especially now that Palermo has been laid and the RCS is the next company available. CTL heading south, buying in his private, and running for only 60. So I really don't think this strategy of dumping the ATA for the CTL is going to play out for Satori. ATA running 3 trains again. He is going to be heading up towards Catania. I think I probably would have liked to see him upgrade Ragusa just for a few extra bucks here. But nevertheless, he's going to prepare for the future, it looks like. Paying for 180 again, he pays it out, and going to allow that last 6 train to sit in the market. AFG, final operation of the round, And he actually is not going to be able to get any of a better run as a result of laying towards the dits. He may slowly make his way over to Messina. Going to take him a very long time to get there unless the RCS is floated and cooperates. Running 2 trains now, running for 130, which is pretty good. That compares to the 180 of the ATA, so 1 train less and only $50 left. Pretty good for him. Into the next stock round, Tacitus running the ATA does have the most cash into the stock round. Not going to be really able to float very easily, and runs the risk of losing a presidency if he floats it without selling shares. Could sell a share of the ATA and just get a little bit of a more secure presidency by doing so. The RCS, I think, is a pretty attractive pickup for him. He is instead going to buy a paying share of the AFG. These shares are pretty cheap. Satori going to join him, and Kodamaniac is... So everybody's going for the AFG so far. I'm a little bit surprised that nobody's hopped on this double share of the ATA. Again, it's going to be running pretty well, and if nobody floats the RCS, it's under no pressure to buy any permanent trains in the near future. Emil, he is buying an SFA of all companies. Tacitus, he buys an SFA as well. So I think everybody's just really scared of dumps here because nobody's willing to invest more than 20% in a company. Satori, buying his own. Not his own, sorry, just buying the SFA. Kodamaniac passing. He does have cash for another share. Could pick up the AFG, but again, I think they're afraid of the dump. Emil, on the other hand, does not have cash for any shares. Tacitus, similar situation, so it looks like probably Kodamaniac has priority. He does. SFA operating, just running 1 train. I think this is good for everybody, but I'm sorry, this is good for Tacitus and bad for everybody else. I assume he's running away with income here. Not exactly running away, but he is operating for the most. He is net worth leader, but only by a little bit. Regardless, this is helping him build up his treasury again. So pretty good for him. And who has priority? Kodamaniac. Tacitus is going to be operating 3rd. So is Kodamaniac going to be in a position to float the RCS? Probably not. Not without selling some SFA shares, I don't think. He is continuing to head towards RCS and Palermo, but laying some expensive track to get there. He has a lot of money in the company, so not the end of the world for him. Does he have the money to buy the 8? He is pretty darn close. With this treasury payout, he may get there. And looks like he will have just enough cash, so that's unfortunate for the ATA. CTL now, probably still heading south. Going to get there eventually. Little engine that could, so to speak. He's paying out for 90 now. And ATA, single train as a result of the 8 train coming out. That's really bad news for him. I think that was preventable. Could he have trashed the SFA at all? Probably. And allowed him to run before the SFA. So going to be running for a lot less. And he pays that out. Emil operating the AFG. He is continuing to head towards Messina. And he runs for 110 and actually withholds. This gives him cash for a permanent train, not a permanent, an 8 train. Did he not have cash before? He was a few bucks short and doesn't have any treasury shares, so did have to withhold to afford a train here. We'll be running pretty well with these 2 trains in the next operating round. He's probably assuming that the SFA is going to lay the track into Palermo and give him a pretty long run for his 8. Unfortunately, this is all narrow gauge track, so it's going to be hard for him to run it. SFA is not going to lay that track, it looks like, and just going to be content to run his 2 trains. Funny that he spent, I guess he doesn't have the cash to do it, basically. Funny he spent all this effort and is not able to actually take advantage of it. Paying out for 170. ATA upgrades Catania, and he drops a token there, so that's good news for him. And he's going to be paying for 130, it looks like. Does he pick up an 8? He's passing for now. CTL finally linking up with the SFA, it looks like. And actually, he's not going to do that either. So funny, I expected both the SFA and the CTL to link into the rest of the network, but both of them are foregoing that opportunity. CTL has a ton of cash. I'm surprised that he didn't take the opportunity to lay that track. He's going to be running for just 90. Does he pick up an 8? He is passing 2. So very conservative play from all these players. AFG, he is just taking the slow trek east and running his 2 trains for 210. Good news for him. And going into the next stock round, it looks like Tacitus is net worth leader. He is 1 share behind Emil, who is trailing him very closely for second place. Emil has a few extra dollars in terms of cash on hand, and Cody Maniac has priority. He could sell shares here to get a float. RCS has very expensive tokens, so needs to float at par pretty high to have a viable company. It's going to be a little bit hard for him to do that. We'll see. But if he doesn't do it, he may lose the opportunity to float a company at all. He's stuck with just the SFA. He is buying the double share, and Emil is just passing. That is pretty wild. So has expensive SFA shares, could sell those and easily float the RCS pretty well. RCS has good track. We'll be getting over to Messina pretty soon. Could upgrade Corleone and get a token in Gigante right away. I'm a little bit surprised that they aren't eager to start it. Tacitus, is he going to sell and start it? Just passing. Pretty incredible. I guess everybody's still just afraid of dumps, but there's double shares available. It's just wild to see people sitting on cash like this. Satori, looks like he might be selling out. I did not expect the player last in priority to be getting the RCS, but it looks like maybe that's what's going to happen. Instead, he's buying the double share that we pointed out before. And Kodamanic passing. So we're going to have 2 players just sitting on over $200 of cash. That seems like a recipe for a loss. Emil is taking the opportunity to buy shares now, but has lost the opportunity to maintain priority by passing. Tacitus, on the other hand, is continuing to pass. Emil also passing. Tacitus now investing in shares. Not clear what's going on here. Emil passing now, and Tacitus passes. So we have 2 players sitting on $200 cash. Neither of them was able to maintain priority. So just kind of a disaster of a stock round from them, I think. They are still leading in share density, at least. ATA, he's heading up to Messina now and running for 150, paying that out. SFA running 2 trains. Is he going to link up with RCS now? He does. So he's going to be running for a lot more money, I think, but has helped the eventual president of the RCS quite a bit. And there's no guarantee it's going to be him. Could very well be Satori. He's running for 240, and he pays that out. Not going to buy a train. AFG also running 2 trains and can run the same track basically as the SFA, so probably is going to have a similar revenue. He is running for 250, just a little bit better, and he pays that out. CTL, does he finally link up with the SFA here? Still passing track. He has a ton of cash in the company because the shares were bought, and he's just paying out for 90. Taking the slow train to nowhere, it looks like. ATA has the opportunity to link up with Messina now, and does. Not a very valuable revenue center for the time being, but eventually will be worthwhile. He does not have any tokens, so he's not going to be able to secure a run into Messina and Calabria. Probably will eventually be tokened out there, but has some time to take advantage of the track in the meantime. SFA, he is finally upgrading Ragusa. I'm surprised we didn't see that a while ago. And he tokens there. So probably eventually going to be looking to bypass Syracusa and get into Catania and the east of the board. Unfortunately, it's guaranteed that the IFT is going to token him out, so maybe not looking towards the east, just looking toward the port instead. This is kind of bad for the AFG. He is running for 240 again, pays it out, and not buying any trains. He does redeem a share, so has 2 shares in the treasury, which is good news for him. These are pretty expensive shares now. And AFG slowly heading towards Messina still. He's running for 250 again, paying it out. CTL, he is going to just upgrade DITS and run for 90 again. Looking at the game state, market is getting depleted, and we have a lot of trains left to go. So we'll see who wants to buy the last 8. Do we have a poison 8 here before the 10s? It looks like that may be the case. Maybe that's why players aren't eager to float a company. They are worried that they would be forced to buy the last non-permanent train and then get caught in a bad position for the train rush. But after two operating sets of just paying revenue, one of these players needs to have enough cash to float a company for a high enough par. Satori doesn't look like he's going to be the guy. Kodomaniac is buying a double share. So he has 2 double shares now, leading the clubhouse with double shares. And Emil is going to float up the SFA. Tacitus, he is selling the SFA. Bad news for everybody that just invested in that company. And is he telegraphing that he's going to be finally starting the RCS? Looks like he's selling out of everything, so probably. And he floats the RCS for max par and is going to buy an extra share as a bonus. This does leave the IFT, which is an attractive company, probably going to be going to Emil. Instead, Kodomaniac is now looking to sell out. Did take a little bit of a hit because Tacitus sold before him. Actually, sorry, he's selling out of the ATA, not the SFA. And now selling out of the SFA, so I'm still correct there. And he's going to be floating the IFT. So he's going to have the SFA and the IFT. Not great synergy as a result of the tokens that have already been laid, but still IFT is a great company. Emil, ton of cash. What is he looking to invest in? He is buying an IFT. Is he going to look to pressure the presidency? Going to be hard for Kodomaniac to sell or defend here without selling, and he's going to be potentially selling double shares in order to defend. So either way, Emil kind of wins here, I think. Tacitus buys an RCS, has 5 shares, and has really maximized the treasury of this company. Satori probably passing, doesn't have enough cash to do anything. Kodomaniac passing. Emil, assume, is going to pressure for the presidency here, and does. Tacitus passing. Satori. I'll just point out again that Satori is the player that dumped out of the AFG, or the ATA, I should say, for the CTL, and is, as a result, in a distant last place. So that gambit really did not work out for him at all. Emil buying another IFT here. Actually, he's selling first and then buying an IFT. So this hurts Kodomaniac. He's filling up the market of the SFA. It's going to be very hard for him to sell a lot of shares to defend this presidency. Tacitus passing. He's kind of licking his chops because he knows he's almost certainly going to be ending up with priority, as Emil is cash leader and pressuring for a presidency. Kodomaniac is selling ATA and will be having enough cash now to defend the presidency, but again, this leaves Emil in a position to pick up some double shares. Is Emil going to force him to buy all 5 shares? He is selling a CTL, and he is pressuring for the presidency still. So this means that Kodomaniac is probably going to be ending up with both the presidency and the double share in the IFT, which is a very strong position. Tacitus still passing. Kodomaniac, he's going to have to sell in order to afford this. I don't know if he can actually do that. He can't. So can Emil sell to buy this double share and take the presidency? Looks like he's going to go for it. So he's selling a CTL. Could also sell an SFA. And he takes it. The problem for him is that Kodomaniac still ends up with the double share. So not the end of the world. I mean, it would have been really kind of devastating, I think, for Kodomaniac to end up with both of those shares. He will end up with the presidency, but not able to secure the double share. And now it's a split presidency. We'll see if Kodomaniac feels secure in maintaining these shares. He may just sell out here, which would be not the end of the world for Emil. He could redeem these shares fairly easily. If he puts these shares in the market, the stock is going to fall back twice before he has an opportunity to redeem them, which makes it a lot easier for him to do. And is Kodomaniac going to give Emil priority? So Kodomaniac is kind of a hard position now. He has cash he'd like to invest, I'm sure, but if he gives Emil priority, he leaves himself open to a dump. I don't know that Emil is super eager to dump the IFT. It is a very good company, but these players have been playing very risk averse, so that may be a concern of Kodomaniac's. He's going to pass, and Tacitus will end up with priority. Emil will not have a dump opportunity, but he has gotten a great presidency off of Codomaniac. IFT first operate. Probably going to be buying the 8 and then the 10 here. Not really a reason not to. And 10 is a good train in the IFT. And he buys a train out of the AFG actually. So I don't like that because he had priority on everybody else. So he could have rusted everybody else's trains. It's going to hurt his AFG a little bit, but it would have been pretty nice to hurt everybody else equally. Now he's opening up an opportunity for someone else to rust his train, and that presidency may not need to rust their own train. So, for instance, the RCS Tacitus can buy the 10 and still be able to run his ATA, whereas the AFG now is still in a position where it's going to be falling back. So I think Emil fumbled that. He needed to push the trains harder. RCS heading towards Messina, and he'd be buying 2 trains. Well, I guess he can buy 1 train and then shuffle money into the ATA to rust everybody else's 6s. Buys the 8 and doesn't even need to shuffle trains. I think he has enough money to buy the 8. He does. Or buy the 10. ATA upgrading Messina. A little bit interesting to do that because it's going to blow up just in probably this operating round or the next operating round. He's just going to get a little extra revenue by running into it, it looks like. I don't know if that's actually a better run. I haven't done the math. He buys the 10. This, as mentioned, hurts the AFG quite a bit. And SFA still has a train. He's upgrading Palermo, going to be running a little bit better, but this, of course, helps the AFG and the RCS. He is on the hook for some permanent trains here, and is probably going to have to redeem some shares or withhold to hopefully afford them in the future. And he does redeem a share. AFG, falling back train list, does have a ton of cash. He can buy the 10, and I don't think he has enough cash for the 12. He has 1350. So he actually does have enough cash to do that. And he's going to buy 2 trains here. Actually, so he's shuffling out of the IFT. Not going to have a run on that 8. And we'll look to buy the 12 with the IFT, I suppose. So he's going to be operating after the ATA as a result of the IFT falling back and has just been shuffling trains kind of ineffectually. I think this is not really the right play. Is he looking to make the IFT a dangerous investment and hope to have Codomaniacs sell out of the company? If he is, he's doing that a little bit early. Did he not have enough cash to buy the 12? He does have exactly enough cash, so I'm not sure why he's punting that for now. CTL, trainless. I guess he's going to be forced to out of pocket the 12. That's bad news for him. But if AFG had bought the 12, he would have been out of pocket for 16. So does that mean that he would bankrupt? He would bankrupt, and Emil would come in second place if he did. So I see the logic now. He's unfortunately handcuffed by Satori. Actually, no. Satori would just be eliminated. Bankruptcy doesn't end the game. So I still don't really understand why he didn't buy the train. I forgot that in 49, bankruptcy is not an endgame condition. CTL, he is selling, buys the 12, and he's actually not even bankrupt. I must have misread the game state. ATA running a permanent train. He is upgrading Catania, and he's running for 210. Very good. IFT trainless. Well, so he doesn't have money for 16. He's going to have to out of pocket some of this money. He gets the nice upgrade. This is important because it allows you to cut out 2 of the hexes in your run, or at least 1 of the hexes. And he buys a 10 from the AFG. So he's just shuffling trains kind of needlessly. He missed an opportunity to pick up cheap permanents and is in trouble as a result. RCS running an 8, doesn't have permanent train money, but will be getting to Messina in the next set of operating rounds. He's running for 180, and he looks like he pays that out. SFA, also without a permanent train, and he's going to upgrade his home tile. He full pays. Does he redeem another share? He does. So looking to basically finance his permanent train purchase when these shares are sold. AFG, he is upgrading the DIT, running for 180. He pays that out, and he's redeeming a share as well. So we're going to see a stall at these 16s, it looks like. Who does that benefit? If the 16 is just hanging out, Tacitus is happy to see that. So is Codomaniac. He's very happy about that. Emil, he also has an 8, but he's the one that would bring out the 16, so unclear why he's neglecting to do that. Tacitus could also force the issue by issuing. CTL running a 12, still has not managed to link up with any track at all, and running for 120, just pretty pathetic. Next stock round, there's no companies to float, but there are lucrative shares available. You've got to be looking at the companies with permanent trains, I think. So that would be the ATA and the IFT. IFT is sold out. CTL is also running a permanent train, but has really bad long-term potential. Shares are cheap, but I think you have other priorities. If you're a president looking at a permanent train, you may be looking just to buy your own treasury shares, so maybe we'll see the RCS selling out here. He is instead going to buy a cheap AFG. ATA is now selling. Need to be a little bit careful about uncovering that double share. Codomaniac buying an SFA. Emil is buying the CTL. That's a company I would not be eager to be buying. It is cheap, but it's same price as the AFG, but he is cert locked on the AFG, so understand why he's buying that. Tacitus, he is buying an SFA as well. Satori has to pass, distant last place. Codomaniac, he is buying an AFG. Emil passing, could have bought another CTL. It's safe to do so. Satori is running one presidency and has permanent train. A little bit surprised that he just sits on the 78 bucks. Tacitus passing, sitting on a bunch of cash again. Codomaniac buying the CTL. Emil passing. Is everybody just going to be sitting on cash again? I see. I was forgetting the cert limit is very low. So Tacitus and Emil are both cert locked. Do they not have better shares that they could be buying than what they own? I guess they've decided that they don't. Well, fair enough. You can't buy shares if the game doesn't let you, so makes sense there to be passing. Messina getting upgraded there. ATA does not have a token as previously mentioned. Who's going to be looking to token there? RCS and looks like IFT. AFG could get there too, but RCS should be operating first. So it's going to be IFT and RCS probably. Running his 10 train. Last time he's going to be hitting Calabria almost certainly. Paying out 320 IFT. Upgrading and tokening Messina as expected. He has a 10 train and it's going to be running for 350. This is why the 10 is so good for the IFT, because you can hit both of these nice off boards. RCS, he is just upgrading DITs. Does lock in the token in Messina, so it has a great run. With a 16 train, should be able to run very well. Does he start issuing to secure that 16? He pays out. So I guess he's saying that, well, if nobody's going to force the 16, he's going to get there eventually just by paying out with his treasury. So no rush for him. Codomaniac, he is withholding, maybe finally recognizing that someone needs to bring out this 16 train. And he is actually issuing a share as well. That's a little bit painful after withhold to have to do that. Still not anywhere near 16 train money. AFG, pretty close to the 16. With a withhold, probably would get there. And he's looking to bypass Ragusa where he's tokened out. He is withholding, and does he bring out the 16? He does. So CTL has a permanent train, doesn't hurt him, and RCS can afford a permanent train with an issue. Unfortunately, he's going to have to shuffle trains unless he wants to out of pocket for now. AFG is redeeming a share. CTL finally links up with Gugardenti, but way too late. Long ago tokened out of this revenue center, and he's running a 12 for only 160. ATA has been tokened out of Messina as noted, maybe looking to just upgrade Syracuse. I don't know that, yeah, I guess he's going to be hitting Syracuse now because he's been tokened out of Calabria. Actually not running that track just yet. That opens up a hole for another company. I don't know if anybody's eager to token there. SFA, does he still have tokens? He does not, so it's going to be left to the AFG probably. ATA, he's withholding. This is because he knows he needs a 16 train in the RCS. I don't know that he's going to be able to really shuffle trains easily, though. He doesn't want the 10 in the RCS, I don't think. He's probably just continuing to pay out. RCS, trainless. He is buying the cheap reverse train. And does he issue now in hopes of picking up a 16 down the road? He is not going to issue. So he does have this nice route for the reverse train, but I'm a little bit surprised that we don't see him trying to get a 16. Maybe he's just assuming that the other player is going to buy his treasury shares in the next operation, in the next stock round. We'll see. SFA, trainless. He is selling his shares, and he has afforded a 16. He could have bought the reverse, I believe. Oh, they were both bought. Who picked up the second one? I missed. So Tacitus has secured himself both reverse 6 trains. I missed that. That's always nice, having a cheap permanent train that you can run for a few extra dollars. Really bad news for Codemaniac. He had to sell a ton of shares to afford that. CTL, he's running again for 160. This company is done, basically. And AFG, last operation for this round, but one more set left. He is going to be heading over to the CTL, it looks like. And he does token in Syracuse, running a 16 train only for 270, though. Unfortunately, did miss out on the token on Messina. IFT still running his 10 train. ATA now has 2 trains. He has been tokened out of Palermo. He's been tokened out in a number of different places. Doesn't have the best run for this reverse train. I guess could be running Ragusa, Syracuse, and Terranova. And then with his 10 train, he's going to be running to Messina probably. So he upgrades Ragusa, and he's going to be paying for 390. Again, not the most impressive run, but could be a lot worse if he didn't have 2 trains. RCS, on the other hand, probably really kicking himself that he wasn't able to get a 16. We'll be running this transmap route from Palermo to Girgenti, and probably looking to increase his share value to eventually pick up a 16 and run into Messina. So he's running for 200, and he pays it out. CTL, nothing to do. Running for 160 still. SFA with a 16 train. Does have a pretty good route. Can hit Palermo and then head over to the southeast. This narrow gauge track is going to be killer for him, though. Running for 290. AFG, last operation. And he is just passing track and running from Palermo to Messina. 270 and pays it out. So let's look at the state of the game. Pretty healthy treasury or bank still. The IFT is inching along the top of the map as a result of being sold out. Going to be looking to eventually enter that blue phase, but it is actually not going to get there in this set. The ATA, if he floats up, will reach the blue zone, but nobody's going to be reaching this endgame trigger, at least in this next upcoming set. I don't think the bank will break in the next set. A lot of people with a lot of cash here. Emil, he is cert locked. Are there any more attractive shares than what he owns? Could look towards the SFA. It's running for a little bit more, has a better stock appreciation, has a permanent train, so no risk of a dump. probably doesn't want to hold on to the CTL share, so could see him swap that for an SFA, which is what he does. Tacitus, similar situation. What is he looking to trade out of? ATA, RCS are both pretty good companies. SFA, is that better than the AFG? Marginally, so maybe looking to sell the AFG for the SFA. He's just going to pass. This is a very close game. The two leading players are separated by like $50. So the idea that he's not going to be optimizing his portfolio seems pretty dangerous. Emil has a lead on shares as a result of his double share. So Tacitus really needs to be careful that he doesn't kind of throw away the game with sloppy play. Satori, this player's in last place. Just narrowly following Cody Maniac after having to out-of-pocket that permanent train. He is going to buy an SFA. Cody Maniac is buying an ATA. Emil is continuing to optimize his portfolio, maybe looking to buy a SFA again. Instead buying an ATA, that makes sense. It is running for a lot more. Tacitus passing still. A little bit confused by that. Satori buying an SFA. Maybe this will sell out. Cody Maniac doesn't have enough money for any shares except for the AFG, and he's going to just pass. Emil passing, Tacitus still passing, and Satori just going to be working towards his cert limit, but not going to be able to reach it with only 150 bucks. Satori is buying the AFG. Actually, he will be able to reach it. I neglected that he could buy multiple AFG shares. So he's happy. Are all the players at their cert limit now? They are. Actually, Cody Maniac is nowhere near close. So he's going to be, looks like, coming in last probably. Satori should be able to overcome him with a 4-share lead. And it's going to be a close race between Emil and Tacitus. Tacitus and Emil both have companies that are running pretty well. ATA running marginally better than the IFT, but Emil has 2 shares on Tacitus, and his second company, the AFG, is running better than the RCS. So unless the RCS is able to pick up a 16 train and run for a lot, Emil should be taking this game. IFT running his 10 train, ATA just laying kind of meaningless track, and he's running for 400 now. RCS running his single reverse train. Is he going to finally issue for the permanent? He is not. Oh, he does. Okay. So that hurts his share value, of course, but he will be running a lot hotter. Also, bringing out a second permanent train does make it less likely that the bank will break. So I think he was forced to do that, but I think I would have liked to see him do that earlier. He's going to be probably losing to Emil, or it's going to be very close. Hard to predict. SFA, he is just running his 16, and he actually only owns 40% of this company. He's a split presidency with Satori, so really unfortunate for him that he had to sell so many shares. CTL, no cash, no track opportunities, just running for 160 for the rest of the game probably. AFG, he is just upgrading DITs and running for 280. He pays that out. IFT continues to run the same route. ATA running 2 trains, and he's paying out for 400 still. RCS, so he's going to be picking up a 16, and this is kind of the determinant of who's going to win the game, I think, if this 16 run is going to be enough to bring him into first place. And he does pick up the 16. That means that there are $3,000 left in the bank, and I think that will be enough to make sure that we see another set. CTL, we always see him doing nothing. AFG, he is running the same route, it looks like, and he is actually going to link up to the south of the map. This links the CTL in to Palermo, which is good news for the CTL player, and Emil is doing this for no real discernible reason. He is not invested in the CTL. Not clear to me why he's helping that company out. Running for 320 and pays. Last round in this set. IFT, probably no track, just going to be running trains. Most of these companies probably not laying too much track. He's paying for 350. ATA, paying for 400 still. RCS now. How much is his 16 run going to be? So he's going to be running for 590. That's very good. He's the sole investor in this company. And we'll look at the spreadsheet at the end of the operating round to see if he has a chance of coming back. SFA, running for 380. CTL, now should be able to hit Palermo. Will be running for 280. Again, unclear to me why Emil was helping him out. Emil, he is running for 320, and he pays it out. So let's just look at the spreadsheet real quick. Emil and Tacitus are the contenders for the win here. Emil has a pretty substantial net worth lead of $500 as a result of Tacitus having to hurt his RCS by issuing. And Tacitus is, even with that 16 train, running for less than Emil. So I think Emil has this in the bag. He can just reallocate his portfolio and buy the better RCS shares that Tacitus has made available. And Tacitus is not able to pick up the double share of the RCS and can only buy one share. So Emil should be taking this game. The game, so IFT will be hitting the endgame trigger in the last operating round of this set. The market's going to break anyways, so it doesn't really matter. And actually, the market has only $800 in it. So if RCS had not bought that 16, the game would have ended already and Emil would win. I don't think that changes the outcome because I think Emil is going to be the eventual winner anyways. Codamaniac has a ton of shares to buy to hit his cert limit and is lucky that they tend to be pretty good shares in the RCS. He's going to pick that up. Emil probably selling something here to pick up an RCS share. Probably the SFA. Doesn't want to sell the double share in the ATA, I don't imagine. RCS is going to be sold out almost certainly. Tacitus, does he finally start optimizing his portfolio? He's going to sell an AFG and does max out on RCS. Satori also selling out of the AFG and buying an RCS. This is good for Tacitus. It means that Emil is only going to be able to pick up one of those shares and not, really optimize the high revenue of the RCS. Kodiak, he is still buying shares, buying the SFA now. That's going to be floating up. Emil passing. Tacitus probably also passing. And Satori passing. So Kodamaniac is just going to be buying his last couple shares here. One share to go. And everybody's at their cert limit, and everybody passes. So just looking here, Tacitus, as a result of floating up, is gained a little bit on Emil, but he's still 400 something dollars behind, or a little under 400 behind. I think that's going to be pretty insurmountable based on his revenue in the last stock round. He does have companies that are going to be appreciating pretty well, but the IFT has some pretty monstrous runs ahead of it, so I think Emil probably has this in the bag. And I don't know that there's any interesting track left in the game, so why don't we just skip to the end of the operating round, and Emil is going to take it. He actually widens his lead, wins by over $800. So it was a good decision to skip there, and Emil will take it. A couple things to point out. CTL player is the player that dumped a company to start the CTL early in the game, and he actually does end up in last place. That's a mistake. And then lots of players just sandbagging and stalling, not pushing trains when they should have. Emil, he's running the IFT and the AFG. I don't remember offhand, but I think the AFG is not the player that was benefiting from the train stall as much as I think it was the ATA that was running 3 trains for a while. The ATA did eventually end up getting messed up by the train rush, but it would have liked to have seen that happen earlier. Emil, however, is the player that just shuffled trains around for a while and neglected to bring out the rusting event on the 16. It ended up working out for him, but I think that was a mistake, to be honest. I think he could have brought that out earlier. So, the fact that he ends up in first place is despite that, not because of that, in my opinion. Tacitus, I think his mistake was just sitting on the RCS shares and not buying a second train earlier. Um, he does take a pretty big hit by issuing shares, and nobody helped him out by buying those shares. But I think you kind of have to do that to have any chance in this game. His revenue in the end actually trailed Emil, and so even bringing out the 16 didn't, I guess, change the trajectory of the game. But would have liked to see him try and bring it out earlier. Why? Oh, so they had no revenue. Um, I think that's the explanation for why he was able to expand his lead by as much as he did. Someone hit the endgame trigger, it looks like, or the IFT hit the endgame trigger, and only the IFT was able to run as a result. So, anyway, well played to the players. Congratulations to Emil, and we will be back with additional commentary in the future. Thanks for listening.